Hey team, welcome back to Digs on Twitch. Back today with a deck tech on a deck that I'm currently wanting to work on a little bit. This is Black-Green Depths, but with Urza's Saga. So this channel has been playing Green-White Depths for a while. Green-White Depths is another Dark Depths deck that utilizes the power of Green Sun Zenith, another Reliquary, and a few other creatures have kind of a plan B in that if your Dark Depths strategy is stifled by your opponent's strategy, or if they have some great answers to it. Traditionally, Black-Green Depths has kind of been all in on that combo, not having that plan B strategy of being able to just beat down with knights or other big creatures. So one nice thing about this version of Black-Green Depths is that it does have that plan B in Urza's Saga, which creates some pretty big creatures in the constructs it creates, and then also allows us to find some things like Retrofitter Foundry, which obviously allows us to go wide with small creatures that then develop into bigger creatures. Maps to go and find either the combo or another Saga. And then Shadowspear, which recently I think has been a pretty good meta choice against a lot of the decks that are playing these 1/1 flyers in Thoughtseize, like Retrofitter Foundry decks, like 8-cast, playing Psy, and just other things where protection might be there. So things like Death and Taxes, where Mother of Runes and Flicker Wisp could be what's keeping you from your 2020 getting through. So Trample there really relevant. So I've broken the deck up into our mana base. So we have 4 Verdants, 2 Basics, 2 Bayous. The Snow-Covered Swamps are because I was going to play Field of the Dead, but I don't think we're going to get there. I don't think this deck really gets to 8 lands or 7 lands that often. I was still going to play Snow Covered because it could just give our opponent a little bit of a whiff that, maybe we're on something like Into the North, which goes and finds snowlands, or playing Field of the Dead, which might make, say, a Bant player play a little bit differently. There's no real downside to playing Snow Covered basics in Legacy, so pretty happy for that. We now have 4 Mox Diamonds, which is really nice. It is card disadvantage, but we do have ways to get that back. And allows us to have some pretty explosive starts, which is nice. We then have Urborg as a 3-of, and Yavimaya Cradle as a 1-of, which these lands really allow us to make sure that the mana's going to be pretty consistent. It means that Dark Depths now has the ability to tap for colored mana, and the same for Saga, which is really nice. We then also have Ghost Quarter, a Step, which gives protection, which is really nice. Bojuka Bog for the graveyard decks, Karakas for any sort of legendary threats that we're going to come across. This deck plays Ghost Quarter because we are playing Pithing Needle, which target number 1 is usually Wasteland. So Ghost Quarter allows us to have some sort of interaction against opposing lands we want to hit, say Urza Saga, Karakas, opposing Dark Depths, but also be able to have a needle in play naming Wasteland, which is pretty strong. There's also some corner cases where you do want to Ghost Quarter yourself to find a basic, but the main one is because most of the time Needle is going to be naming Wasteland, so we want to have that sort of a little bit of flexibility. This deck's playing Hexmage, which I would say that the best sort of 1-2 punch with this deck is turn 1 Urborg into Hand Disruption, and then turn 2 Dark Depths, play Hexmage, and then we have Dark Depths for a turn 3 win, which is pretty nice. Hexmage also nice against things like Planeswalkers, and also Chalice of the Void, if relevant. If 8-cast casts something like a Chalice for 1 against us, and we Hexmage it, the Chalice is then set to 0, which does counter a lot of their things. So there are some situations where, say, a mono red prison deck might be playing Chalice for 1, and Hexmaging it means it can no longer cast their Chrome Moxes, which is pretty cool. But just for consistency reasons, we're running the 4 Hexmage, the 4 Dark Depths, and the 4th Thespian Stage. And for those of you who are unclear about the combo, Thespian Stage is a land that can copy other lands. Dark Depths is a land that comes into play with 10 counters on it, and when it's checked without counters on it, you kind of get to remove it from play and get a 2020 Merit Lage. Because Stage is already in play, if you copy Dark Depths, it becomes a copy of Dark Depths with no counters, and therefore sort of triggers that 2020 to come out and do something, which is pretty cool. Saga. Probably the big upgrade for the deck to move away from just being just a black-green straight Dark Depths deck is having this Saga ability. and access to Saga, which in the game so far, which you can check out in my other video, was incredible. Saga's been insane, especially at finding things like Needle, like Expedition Map to find pieces of the combo, or some of our one-off lands like Karakas, and then of course Shadowspear, which is not just great for getting through some of these small creatures in the air with our 2020, but also just making combat math a little bit more difficult for decks like Blue-Red Delver, where, you know, that sort of lightning helix of take 3, gain 3 with something like a Reclaimer is pretty good. I guess it actually would be a 4/5 with Shadowspear on it if it was a fully turned on Reclaimer. But yeah, Shadowspear has been really nice as well. Elvish Reclaimer, probably the best, in my opinion, card design in the last 5 years. I love this card. I think it's hit Legacy in a really nice spot where it's obviously powerful enough for the format. Elves has picked it up a lot. And it just isn't too broken. It obviously is very powerful and can do broken things in the right deck, like, you know, get together a 2020 out of nowhere, but I really like this design. So we're running the 4 Reclaimer and 4 crop rotation. So really nice ways to find the lands we want. Obviously crop at instant speed is great for finding things like Bojuka Bog or Sejiri Steppe to give protection to our creatures. And then also just in response to a wasteland, you know, being able to crop away the land that we are getting targeted. And, you know, making use of that is pretty good. So crop also allows some pretty cool starts. So things like Mox Diamond, Yavimaya, and Dark Depths, we can float 3 green. We can then trade away the Yavimaya for a stage and then copy Dark Depths, which is pretty cool. It's out of nowhere. I've been playing 3 Sylvan Libraries in Green White Depths as a nice way to recoup some of that card loss from things like Mox Diamond, and just a really nice powerful 2-drop on turn 1. But Life in the Loam is really strong here because it also makes use of the graveyard and allows us to recoup some of the cards that have gone from Mox Diamond, Saga. You know, getting back a Ghost Quarter can be really strong, or even a Sejiri Steppe, so that's always pretty cool. And then Sylvan Library. I mean, this deck is usually going to be faster than the other combo decks, especially the ones that are based on creature damage or combat damage. So, yeah, Sylvan Library, just a pretty good card. It has lost some power with the printing of Prismatic Ending, and a lot of the decks where Sylvan Library was really strong now have access to game 1 interaction with it, but I think it's still good enough to have in the deck as a 2-of. This is kind of the permission piece here. So we have some needles, which first one usually in the blind is going to name Wasteland. Other things include planeswalkers, opposing creatures with effects, Aether Vials, things of that nature. But usually, you know, the big targets for needles are things like Wasteland, Karakas, maybe something like a Teferi. But having all 4 is really nice, and then obviously ways to fetch them in Saga is really strong as well. Naming opposing sagas can be pretty good as well. So we'll see how those, you know, come out over the coming weeks, and if the full 4 are needed, or if we could maybe cut down and add in another card in here. Thoughtseize and Inquisition. Thoughtseize is just really strong because it can take really anything. I was going to run Duress as a split in here, but I think Inquisition is just a little bit better than Duress, especially against the Ragavan decks where I do want to take a creature on the play. And Duressing an opponent and seeing just sort of turn 1 creatures like Mother of Runes or Goblin Lackey or Ragavan isn't really a feel-good moment. So I think Inquisition here is a Thoughtseize 5 and 6 is pretty strong. For the board, we have 2 Leylines and a Surgical for Graveyard Hate. I was running Endurance, but I don't think we have enough green cards in the deck to actually make full use of it. So I think relying on the 2 Leylines, the Surgical Extraction, and then Crop Rotation for Bojuka Bog for Graveyard Hate is more than enough. Plague Engineer is really nice as just kind of a sweeper effect for the deck. Great against Death and Taxes. There was a game against Goblins where it was quite good. Against Jund Madness, it's awesome on Lizard, taking care of all the 1/1 creatures that come into play. But just generally a really nice way to kind of sweep the board from anything like Flickerwisp or other sort of pesky threats. Choke is just a green card that I will always stand by, and I think is a pretty nice way to try to beat up on some of the blue decks, especially the greedy ones that are playing more than sort of 3 colors. And although Prismatic Ending again is just a really nice way to deal with enchantments from these decks, I think that the Choke gives us a bit of a haymaker in the board for some of the tougher matchups like Bant Miracles that have multiple ways to deal with creatures. multiple ways to block in like Ice Fang and Endurance, multiple ways to gain life in Uro and Swords to Plowshares of that nature. So yeah, I do like choke here. Trophy was an interesting one, and Murktide Regent is a big reason why I'm not running Abrupt Decay. Also things like Khan the Great Creator I've been seeing popping up, and also opposing lands like Saga or Dark Depths I do want to have some interaction with. So I've gone with 2 trophies in the board for removal over Abrupt Decay for that. The encounterability of Abrupt Decay is pretty good against the Ragavan decks, but I think in this matchup we're looking okay. I think Delver isn't too well equipped to deal with the 2020 once it's on board, unless they're running the white version and can buy some time and maybe Prismatic Ending or find their one of Karakas with the Needles turning off their Wastelands as their kind of way to keep our combo in check is really good for us. Force of Vigor, kind of like Choke, I just love having it in any green deck that I play. And I could be wrong here. I might have to look at some of the numbers behind how many green cards should be in a deck for you to have a card like Force of Vigor, to look at the chances of making sure that you could have Force in your opening hand against the decks you want it, like 8 cast, and know you could actually cast it for its alternate cost of discarding a green card. So that's definitely something to think about. Dampening Sphere is a card that I really like. I'm not too sure where it's going to come up. It's mainly for combo decks, Cloud Post, any sort of Ancient Tomb decks it's obviously quite good against. But yeah, just a nice sort of permanent to have in play against decks that want to be casting multiple spells a turn, like Ant, Tess. It can affect Doomsday, which is nice, especially if you want to tap out for something like an Oracle and then try to hold up a Pact or a counterspell. They're going to have to pay multiples for that, so that's pretty good there. And then Torpor Orb. Torpor Orb's just a sweet card against decks like Death and Taxes. It's obviously quite good against Thassa's Oracle, Allurin, which I haven't seen too much of since Eternal Weekend Online. But yeah, Torpor Orb, just a strong card that doesn't really hurt this deck, which is nice because all our creatures are just pretty straightforward, don't have ETBs. So that's pretty much it. What do I want to get out of this? I think I want to give people a reason to not just go straight to green-white depths, and that might have the cards for green-black depths, and want to play the deck in a competitive setting. And I think that this is probably, obviously, a pretty basic start as a 1.0 of the deck, but I think it's pretty well tuned towards the current meta. But obviously, as I play through this, as I get more reps going, we can adjust some of these numbers, especially in a deck that has so many tutorable effects, things like Saga, Crop Rotation, Elvish Reclaimer. Having the one-offs in the deck are going to be seen a lot more than other decks that don't have those tutorability components. So that's pretty cool as well. So if you like this content, definitely consider subscribing. I'm going to be live with this deck in a few hours, so we'll have that up on YouTube shortly as well. But if you have any questions, leave them below. I'm always happy to answer. All right, let's get into it. Cheers.